Hello, thank you for being with us. We have very special guest with us here, the man who sold his skin. So I'd like to introduce and I'd like to ask you to welcome our very special guest, Yahya Mahayni, to this very special talk. So hello, Yahya.
Hello, Harim. How are you? Thank you so much for having our film at the Korean Arab Film Festival and for having us here now at this talk.
Thank you very much for your time, and it's a great pleasure, of course, and then it's a great opportunity for the audience to meet you online and then also to talk about the film. So thank you very much for that. So
thank you.
Yeah, and the film, I just introduced you briefly by taking the film's title, The Man Who Sold His Skin, but we are getting there soon. But maybe you can break the ice first. So how is life these days? I mean, this ongoing COVID-19 situation, and where are you right now? Can you say hello to the audience briefly and maybe talk about that?
So the audience just watched the film?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed the film. And we hope that certain parts which could have been appetite cutting were still nevertheless bearable. I think you know which scene in particular I'm referring to, Harry. There's a scene which is somewhat grotesque. But anyway, COVID-19 hit right when they had just finished the film and they didn't know when they were going to release it, whether it was going to be released. And so it really came as a piece of good news in the midst of all the bad news of the COVID-19. Currently, I'm in Cairo, and it's great to see that we're still managing to have film festivals such as yourself showing the film and holding film festivals despite this virus.
Although the audience have seen the film, so would you like to say briefly about the film, about the man who sold his skin?
Sure. I think, I mean, it would be unjust for me to describe how I've seen the film, given how subjective takes on this movie might be, depending on what we relate to, what we project onto it. But I hope that the audience will have been able to relate to sometimes somewhat unrelatable characters, bearing in mind that it's a fiction and some of the characters are somewhat far-fetched. Nevertheless, I think there's one aspect in the characters which I think transcends all of human beings, and it's the fact that sometimes we make decisions which are contrary to our principles in order to achieve an objective. And this comes at the trade-off of some element of our own dignity and our own freedom. And so this is really a film ultimately about one man's attempt to regain the bit of freedom and dignity which he willingly gave up in order to achieve what he wanted at the time, which was, the love of Abir and her blue eyes.
Mm-hmm. I think this was like a real big project to you. I mean, it ended up being a big project. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the first time I have a lead role in a feature film, which is actually produced. I've played in so many short and amateur films, which does not make them any less valuable. It was still great experiences, but this was the first time, let's say, I actually participated in such an ambitious film with a director who's as experienced as Kaouther. So and I was just a piece of the puzzle in this film ultimately. All the other actors, the crew, the technicians, the director, everyone was just fundamental to actually making this film what it turned out to be. It's just that you see the actors' faces mainly on.
And yeah, I mean, you said this is your first lead role, and you won the award at Venice Orizonti competition. This film also won the nomination for the Academy Award. Wow! And the first lead role.
Yeah, it was pretty unbelievable. And but there's one thing I like to tell people when they say that I won the Venice Film Festival. Again, I think this goes back to the point that acting is such a collective endeavor. It really is. Like, if the other actors were not good, I wouldn't have been good. If Kaouther's direction to me as an actor was not good, I wouldn't have been good. If the circumstances of the set would not have been good, if the assistant director wasn't keeping the peace on the set, if the camera guy was, not doing his job, or not a camera guy, I mean the DOP, which is Christopher Aoun. Sorry, my terminology in cinema is a little bit elementary. Or the steady camera, which is Nestor Sarasaro. If anyone was not, doing their bit properly, you as an actor, you're uncomfortable, you're not present, you can't deliver, you know what I mean? So I think we won the Venice, that Venice prize. And I think what was very nice also is that the film then went on to win all sorts of other prizes, which kind of attest to its other qualities, So it won Best Script at Stockholm Film Festival. It recently won Best Script at I forgot its name, but it won a diversity of awards, which kind of attest to, the different elements of the film, which make it unusually outstanding, I suppose. And so I was just very honored to have been able to participate with the interpretation of this individual, Sam. Which leads me to, the second thing that I wanted to say is that actors dream of having roles like this. I mean, out of the acting friends that I have, people dream of having a role where you really see an emotional roller coaster in a character, because that's what allows character building and the emotions to come out and whatnot. So, and the character in this film was well written because, and by Kaouther, who wrote the script also, because there were stakes which were getting higher and higher as the film progresses for this individual. The succession of humiliations which he goes through ultimately lead him to question whether the freedom he has supposedly obtained was actually worth it, or was it just, relative and useless, and everyone is part of the system and they're slaves to it, and he just wants to escape it. Paradoxically, he seeks to find his freedom by committing or faking to commit the atrocious act so that he can find his freedom in jail. I mean, you think that's like, it's crazy. It's anyway.
Yeah. The whole chemistry of these actors and actresses, I mean, all the ensemble was really great. And then the story, the character development, and then also the script itself was really wonderful. As you mentioned, it seems like really once in a lifetime kind of opportunity to meet this kind of work. Of course, I hope it's not just once, but so yeah, speaking of the beginning, I mean, the script, so how did you meet this project at first? I read somewhere that the director found you from piles of audition tapes.
I had stopped acting when I got contacted for this role, because acting was something I at one point I took seriously, but then I'm like, listen, you can't find any interesting roles. None of them are paid. You can't make a living from it. So I stopped looking for roles. And then years later, I got a phone call. They're like, yes, hi, Yahya. And it would turn out to be one of the people helping Kaouther cast the main role. Apparently, that individual had seen my pictures, which I had sent to a casting director years beforehand, who forwarded her my picture. And so one thing to led to another, they saw my headshots. And they're like, okay, that's interesting. Let's contact them for some self-taped auditions. And so I did some self-taped auditions. I prepared them like a lot, like for 2 weeks. I asked for like a 1 week extension, learned my lines inside out, prepared everything, did the casting. And Kaouther liked what she saw, and then she invited me for an in-person audition with Dealian, who interprets Abir, because she wanted to test the chemistry between us. And so that lasted 2 hours, and then sometime later she told us, listen, you have the role. And I'm like, wow, great, fantastic, very intimidating, obviously, to find that out. I was pretending that I was not stressed, but I'm like, oh.
Wow. I mean, apart from, that it's a leading role, I think Sam Ali, the character, is really somewhat complicated, but it also requires sophisticated acting as well. So what did you feel when you first sort of saw or read about this character? And what was your version of interpretation of this character, Sam Ali?
I think my initial apprehension of the character as I read him in the script was different to the ultimate character that we fixed through discussions with Kaouther, through her directions, and through our work leading up to the film with Dea, to see how this character actually, his relationships are with some of the other key characters, Jeffrey Godefroy, played by Kundabo, or Soraya Al-Waldi, who's played by Monica Bellucci, and others, and his mom, played by Darina Jundi. So me initially, it took some work basically, and some adaptation to make Sam Ali as close as possible as Kaouther had actually envisioned him. In the end, Kaouther made him highly sensible towards the girl he loves. Deeply in love with her, to the extent that sometimes he loses his sense of self, of control when he's around her. It's a very romanticized version of how someone may be around someone he loves. And so that for me was what required a lot of work from my part, because I was not very comfortable, generally speaking, playing love stories, because I always thought, oh, I look so cheesy, it's going to be so cheesy. And maybe it was cheesy to some people, maybe it was cheesy, but it's good, it pushed some limits. And so, but more importantly, it was I think the important thing was there's so many levels at which this character goes through situations in which he's humiliated more and more. And so the most important thing was just trying to keep that progression, I suppose, consistent with how someone might feel in circumstances such as his. I guess that's just the basics of acting, but just try to be as true as possible to the situations that these characters go through, and ultimately reach the stage of just giving up, or at one point, at least.
Like the title, the man sold his skin to be with his love and to be free, but found himself in a new jail, which is called museum or gallery. So that transition is so interesting. What did you sort of try to focus to express Sam Ali's very complicated situation? He's a refugee, but he's turning into a living piece of artwork, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are various aspects, but here you put yourself in the situation of someone who's found himself a refugee in Lebanon due to very fortuitous declarations that he made on a train, right? He's in love with a woman who's from a social class which is somewhat higher to his, and her mom is not she hasn't even taken the step of talking to her mom about Sam Ali, because of this reality. And then he finds himself in Lebanon working in a chicken factory, vaccinating chicks. And, he says he wants to be part of the system. He wants to be productive. He wants to be a chicken, he doesn't want to be, And so we've all been in situations where we've lost confidence when someone did not love us back, or for whatever reason, and so in this situation, he sees that the woman he loves decides to marry a diplomat and go to Belgium. And then he sees that, you know, they're living in this life, they're in Belgium, and meanwhile he's stuck in Lebanon with a roommate, you know, in some small room working in a chicken factory. You can imagine the sort of pressure that builds on him to say, like, listen, what's preventing me from making this love happen? Is it just me going to Europe? And on top of that, he's having to steal at galleries and, you know, food at galleries, and he's being humiliated. And so all these circumstances push him to want to agree to the deal, which comes into his lap. You know, the deal of selling his skin to a famous artist in consideration for a visa, in consideration for a third of all sale proceeds. And so he saw this as, he knew at the time that this decision was going to entail a certain cost, a certain curtailment of his freedoms, and a certain sacrifice to his dignity. But there he said to himself, the means, the end justifies the means, and the end here was Abir. And so in reality, I think he didn't weigh all the repercussions that this deal would have on him. And he did it out of what we call duress of circumstances. He wasn't fully capable of exercising his free will, his autonomy at that time, because he had the pressure of all his situation, his desire to get to Europe. In contrast to the actual man who sold his skin, which is Tim Steiner, he was very happy to sell his skin to Willem Delvoye to do a tattoo. And until today, you know, he goes to different museums around the world exhibiting his back. So it's important to say that, you know, this film is inspired by a work of art, but it's not inspired by a true story. There's no Sam Ali walking around there or something else with a tattoo on his back. So,
was it also physically challenging? I mean, you had to have this tattoo and also turn into a living artwork to be there in the, well, new space, sometimes which might feel like new jail. I mean, this gallery or these closed spaces. What was the difficulty or sort of challenge for you to play Sam Ali?
I think the main difficulty was, I mean, there were various difficulties, to be honest. But the tattoo from just a logistical perspective was very time consuming to put initially. You know, sometimes it would take upward of 3 hours, and I had to lie down on my stomach. I couldn't move. You had three, you know, Florence de Pestel, her sister, and someone else, generally speaking, to put the tattoo perfectly, because, you know, sometimes there's close-ups and it had to be consistent. And so logistically, it was very tiring sometimes, because at the start of every day, you have to lie down just on your stomach for 3 hours in a very uncomfortable position. Obviously, that as time went along, that time decreased. Plus, by the end of it, it was beautiful because, you know, I had a yoga mattress, we had music, you know, we started the day. It was actually a relaxing session. So that aspect took some adaptation. Meantime, the actual character, frankly, I think the main challenges were just the challenges of preparing the character came before we started filming. But once we started filming, we really went into automatic mode, you know. In the first week, I was, you know, questioning myself a lot, too much, as to, you know, am I doing things right? Could I have done things better? Am I staying true to the director's vision? And that happened every day for 15 minutes, but you learn to live with it, you know. And so the idea once we started filming is just to remain as loyal as possible to the director's vision of this character, to remain as present as possible in the different scenes, remembering the stakes for the scenes sometimes, and then just having fun, like enjoying it, because, you know, the reason I did acting is because I like it, you know. So there's no point, like, you know, some scenes were very emotional, but that's what makes them fun, you know. Like the scene with his mom on the phone, or some of the scenes in, you know, some of the other scenes which I suppose required a little bit more searching, but but that's so much fun. I mean, that's why that's what I love about acting. It allows you to live imaginary circumstances and take them as truthful. So.
Yeah, I love that scene too. When he spoke to his mom. This film has so much layer. It has the reality of refugees. You're a Syrian actor, right? So
yes.
and we are here at the Arab Film Festival, and we see many films about this conflict in Syria, and then also the refugee reality as well. So how was the film to you? I mean, in terms of this issue of refugee?
For me, frankly, it was secondary because it's not. I mean, it was just part of the many factors which influenced Sam Ali's decision to take a decision which he would not normally take. And so, and so the fact that he was a refugee in Lebanon was part of that complex puzzle. For me, honestly, the film, even though it has that in the background, and it does evoke the question of what is the value of human life when, in comparison, the value of a human artwork can cross borders more easily. And it led me to think, what are the reasons for that? Is it inhumane? But the fact is then you realize that a work of art does not need food, it does not need water, it does not need an education, it does not need a roof over the head. And so it's one of those uncomfortable realities that, despite the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, despite the fact of what we say about equality, despite all that stuff, as human beings, we're born into different social classes in different countries with different passports, and those passports can allow you to travel different countries. And so there are personas non gratas in today's world, based on just where you're born. But I think it would be overly simplistic to say that it's just based on where you're born. It's also the social class, the means that you have. And I think with this movie, what Kaouther did ingeniously with this film is to highlight one of these inconsistencies, which is really, if you're born on the wrong side of the world, I mean, I don't think it's side, but there's something which affects the very starting point as a human that you begin with, which includes where you're born. And that's a reality.
That's one of many great elements of this film, that it kind of reveals this complexity of reality and life, but at the same time it makes you sort of more easily empathize to the issue. And it's not just about refugee issue, but it's more about, as you said, it's about this world, especially this world, the material world, where almost everything is commercialized, and also by showing a man who sold his skin, for freedom, for love. This whole metaphor, or also satire about the modern world. And I think that's one of the beauty of this film, this multiple layer that makes you to look back on the contemporary world we are living in with this rich texture. So yeah, I mean, and you're acting, of course, yes.
Thanks. I admire that about Kaouther. She says it oftentimes that what provoked the idea for this film was when she saw Tim Steiner in the Louvre exhibited. She's like, wow, that's so provoking, just a man sitting there and his skin is tattooed, and then learning that he's going to be skinned and his back is going to be exhibited. And it just also questions the limits of personal freedom. Like some people be like, oh no, he shouldn't do that. It's like, well, it's his body. Who are you to say what he can or cannot do with his body? And that's also a theme which is evoked in the film. Which laws actually permit this sort of thing. And so yeah, it evokes a lot of questions. It is multi-layered, as you say, and it's very interesting to have other takes other than mine on the film. So
you mentioned Kaouther a few times. So how was working with her? Her two previous films, Shala of Tunis and also Beauty and the Dogs, were screened at the Arab before.
Oh wow, okay.
And she was here in Seoul in person.
No way.
Yeah, we had this pleasure to have her, and also the chance to have the Q&A with the audience. And this time it's great to have you. And then, so how was working with her?
For me, working with Kaouther, I mean, because I didn't know her work before I got contacted for this film, and then before she told me I actually have the role, she sent me links to all her films. And I watched them and I was like, wow, this is, you can't pinpoint her universe. Some directors, they have a universe of their own, some sort of consistency in what they do that you can say, okay, you can project onto what this next film is going to be like. But that's what I love about her work, because if you look at her short films, at her docufictions, at Beauty of the Dogs, they're so varied. But what I did find though, was that in some films, there is an ultimate final underlying theme, and so in Beauty and the Dogs, for me, it was like, when I finished the film, I was just like, in my mind, I had this message going, justice, 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 and with another one of her short films, which she didn't send me initially, but I asked her, I'm like, I saw this film and you didn't send me the link, could you please send it to me? It's called Pot de Colle, Pot of Glue. And that's like love, love, love by the time you finish watching that short film, which incidentally is my favorite one. And so with The Man Who Sold His Skin, it's like dignity, freedom, freedom, dignity, And so I was very intimidated when she sent me the links to her films. And then I met her and for the audition, and it went well. And the more we got to speak, the more I realized that, like, she's been thinking about this film for the longest time ever. Like, she's been planning every single minute detail of this film. It's crazy that the level of perseverance, dedication, seriousness that she put into this film, which she had to, because it was a relatively low budget film. So she was involved in every single decision, down to like the print on Sam Ali's like peacock underwear, to where we were like filming on set, with the different choices of paintings that we were going to put on the set, to the mirrors, to the actual camera and lighting, working very closely with Christopher Owen. So, once we started filming, she was in a zone. She had one mission, which is to make sure that she had what she needed in order to make this film with what she had. And so it was fantastic working with her. Really, it was, I hope I have the chance of working with other directors who are trustworthy and caring as she was on this film. I can feel the ground shaking. I'm sorry for this construction in the background.
No, I hope it's not disturbing you too much. Maybe, we are about to wrap up with the last question. Before and after The Man Who Sold His Skin, I think many things has changed. So what are your hopes and dreams for now, and maybe related to next project as well?
My hopes is that my hope do not necessarily concern me personally. I just hope that Kaouther continues making films that inspire her. I think she's a great writer. She's very intelligent. She's very cultured. Really, like you can tell that she's read so much. She really has an ability to just observe and then create on the back of this. And I really admire that about her. And I hope that she continues making films in the same line as what she's been doing. And I suspect she will continue surprising her fans and audiences. So me personally, all I can wish for is to the extent that other roles come my way, that they be as perfect on all sides, because on this film the whole team was humble. Kaouther was amazing. It was just the role itself was so well written. It was so much fun to interpret. These are circumstances which I try to tell myself that it's okay if I don't come across roles and opportunities like this again. and just to be grateful for having been able to at least have this opportunity once in my life. So
it shouldn't be just once, I think, because we definitely want more to see from you. So we hope, and there will be definitely a second and third.
감사합니다.
Okay. Any one last goodbye comment to the audience?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much to the Arab Film Festival, and thank you very much to the audience for watching the film. It's an hour and 40 minutes. I really hope that during that hour and 40 minutes, you did not think about a pizza in the oven. You did not think about anything else. The beauty of actual cinema is just being able to just be totally submerged by what you're seeing and watching and hearing. And I hope we managed to achieve this with this film.
Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your interpretation of the movie and character. I mean, it's been an honor and it's been a real pleasure to be with you.
Well, I mean, it's reciprocal. Thank you so much for your time also, and for your questions, and for watching
this film is, I think, the greatest pleasure we have this year for the festival, and also I hope it'll meet a broader audience in Korea, and we will definitely look forward to your next project. So
thank you
very
much.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.